When I was 8 or 9 years old, Sergio Leone's classic Dollars trilogy was being shown at the ABC cinema in Southend where I lived. They were back again, more than a decade after their initial release, rolling as reruns. I kept seeing the billboard posters when I was in town with my mum shopping. Drawn in by the artwork on those posters, they seemed to have a magnetic pull on me. I'd stop directly in front of them, looking up in wonder, like some little lost zombie, and pretty much fall into a trance. You see, I'd wanted to be a cowboy for just about as long as I could remember. By the time I was 6 years old, I'd seen hundreds of westerns. I'd lay in front of the old TV in our lounge, glued to those Ford, Walsh and Hawks classics. I didn't care if they were in colour or black and white grainy flicks. It was the vast open moving landscapes and the lone dude on horseback just passing through them. I couldn't care less for cartoons. I wanted Cooper, Fonda, Jimmy Stewart, the Duke. I loved all of them. But there was something about those Sergio Leone posters that was different. The characters were not like the normal guys in the movies I'd seen. I mean, even the main guy looked sinister. I wanted to see those 3 films so much, but they were AA or X-rated. It was not going to happen. Anyway, on one of the occasions in town, whilst the posters were still up, I was marched around a W.H. Smith store, which sold stationery and books, etc. I was with my mum and she was buying camera magazines. As I followed her around, a book caught my eye. It was called A Fistful of Dollars. The movie from the cinema was here on paperback and in arm's reach. I had to have it. I highly doubted my mum would buy it for me even if I asked. 1, because of the money. 2, the movie was for adults, so the book would be too. So I did the only thing I could think of, and I stole it. Heart thumping and guilty as hell, imagining how bad things would go if I was caught, and it would be bad. I threw caution to the wind and stuck that little paperback down the front of my Levi's. I stood with my mum at the till with my heart in my mouth. Walking out the door, I was waiting for the hand of doom to grab my shoulder, but luckily it never come, and I strolled straight into the sunset with my mum, itching to read that book that was tucked safely yet uncomfortably in my pants. I opened it up in bed that night and fell headfirst into Sergio Leone's world. I can't tell you how many times I read that book. The words on those pages sealed the deal. I was going to be a cowboy no matter what. But since I was 8 or 9 at this point, and unlike when I was 5, the reality had hit me. I was actually English and lived in the UK. And even in America, the Old West had died out 80 years ago. However, this did not deter me in the slightest. Moving forward to 1989, I went with a pal to California to hit up some skateboarding zen-like mythical places we'd seen in magazines. Mike McGill's skate park, Venice Beach, Huntington Beach, etc. We both saved up our money and still just about teenagers flew off to the Golden State. I kind of had a bust up with that friend while I was away and I ended up moving around a bit alone while I was there. One day in Santa Monica, I'd stopped skating to smoke a joint on this bench, and I was just there hanging, watching the world skate and surf by me. I heard this sound that was like thunder. I looked up northbound on PCH and saw around 50 motorcycles taking up the whole bloody road. They were coming this way. Cars heading towards them had to pull over out the way, as the rumble of their engines was unmistakable. These guys were in beaten up denims and looked crazy and wild-eyed. As they got near me, they were tough-looking dudes, the kind of dudes you wouldn't actually want to catch their eye. And as they rolled past me slowly, I looked at their motorcycles. They all had the same badge, Harley-Davidson. They were just beautiful, the coolest looking machines I'd ever seen, and the sound was unforgettable. I watched their backs head off up towards Venice, and I saw the patches on them. They read Hell's Angels. But what I saw was the Cowboys. I sat there stoned, and everyone around me looked like they were breathing a sigh of relief. The next day I was in Hollywood. I wanted to skate the stars on the boulevard. I was flying down when I come upon a shop selling Harley-Davidson merch. I went inside and sometime later come out, my wallet a lot lighter, but now the proud owner of a pair of Harley-Davidson engineer boots. I knew I was going to buy a Harley-Davidson. I was certain. I hadn't had a motorcycle since I was 16. I'd not done my test, but I knew. I mean, I'd just spent the money I was going to buy a new skateboard with on a pair of black boots that I couldn't even wear to skate in. What was it about those motorcycles and the dudes on them? As ridiculous as this sounds, they just looked free. They looked like me and my pals did, ripping around on our skateboards when we were out on the streets just tearing it up. But these were grown men still hanging in a pack. Some of them had bedrolls on the back of their sissy bars. They were passing through, on the move, ready for anything. I thought about when I had my 50cc. As soon as my pals, Stan and Brian, got theirs, the first thing we did was went camping. We rode 20 miles and camped on a seawall. No tent, no mat, just sleeping bags. We built a fire, almost caught our bikes alight as we poured petrol everywhere trying to light the wood. We cooked sausages, slept under the stars. I hadn't thought about it at the time, but looking back now, that's exactly what the Cowboys did in every movie I'd watched, every bloody one. Bedroll on the back of their saddle, rode with a buddy, heading nowhere, talked shit around a campfire, ate, drank, bed down in the dirt. The connection was suddenly made. This was how I could achieve my childhood dream. When I was done skateboarding, I was going to buy a Harley-Davidson, I thought. This was not for now. My passion for the ramps and coping was bang on point then. No, this was for another time, another place. But I bought the boots because I didn't want to forget. And obviously because I'm irresponsible and they just look bloody cool. I've never referred to myself as a biker. I've been referred to as one, and when it happened it caught me off guard. Maybe I am, maybe I ain't. I have people I know whom I refer to as bikers, but most of the people I call bikers live and die motorcycles. There's nothing else. I mean, the 1%ers, obviously, I call them bikers. There is this guy I know called Legs. He was a rocker back in the 60s. A friend of my old man's. You could dress Legs up in a pink nightgown, put him in the middle of a busy supermarket, and everyone would still know he was a biker. It's in his blood, it's in his eyes. He raced motorcycles his whole life. He bored out my 50cc when I was a kid. That guy could tune the hell out of any motorcycle. He built motorcycles from the ground up. He lived and died motorcycles. A biker. One of the first bikers I knew was this guy called Biffo. He owned a motorcycle shop in Southend for the last 4 decades until just recently. Biffo kind of reminds me of Clint Eastwood crossed with Evel Knievel. He looked like both of them and has the swagger. The first time I saw him I was 15. I was in the tiny village I lived in. He was dating some lady down the street. Guessing now, back then he was probably in his late 20s, maybe 30. We had a half-pipe skate ramp in our front garden, much to the horror of the whole street. I'd be out there every day on that ramp, and Biffo would often pass by on this black Kawasaki Z1300. I remember seeing it said 1300cc. I couldn't get over it. I used to walk up when it was parked on the driveway and look at it closely. I was fascinated by that bike. I'd only ever seen bikes that were 1000cc. It freaked me out that it was 1300. And when Biffo would pass, he wouldn't wear a helmet. He'd just ride by in a t-shirt, his hair blowing in the wind. He was like a law unto himself. It made me smile, and I'd often give him a nod. This kid on the ramp with the skateboard. He blanked me though for ages, but I persisted because I'm like that. And then one day he just nodded back, the slightest of nods, but it was there, and I was stoked. Pathetic, ain't it? But to me, he was a biker, and he was a cowboy. Turned out when I got my first Harley in my late 20s, I took it to his shop for a service. I told him I was the kid on the ramp, and I remembered him on that Z1300, and his girlfriend's home, riding by with no lid. He remembered the bike, he remembered the woman he was screwing at the time. He just didn't remember the kid with the skateboard. But the more I got to know Biffo, he was definitely a cowboy. He even had a home in Texas, and he would go out there most years and ride across to party at Sturgis. He partied hard, he built crazy motorcycles, he lived life by his own rules and took no prisoners. He was one of them people you either hated or loved, but I liked him because he didn't give a shit. Biffo is a biker and a cowboy, and he's a dying breed. So for me, a Harley was a horse. The stance of the riders looked practically the same. The thought of being hunched over on a sports bike never appeals to me. Maybe it's ignorant to have never considered buying a different type of motorcycle, but I can just put it like this. For me, they're the only ones that turn me on, that draw me in, make my heart thump. I've ridden other types of motorcycles, Triumphs, Japanese bikes, etc., but only really out of politeness as their rider wanted a shot on mine. I just didn't get that feeling. We're all drawn to certain things. Harley-Davidson is my weak spot. Once I rode my first one, I was hooked. It was wild and free, it was as noisy as me, an unpredictable beast with a heart and soul of its own. I'm not here knocking other motorcycles, and don't take it that way. There are folks that love all of them, and that's why there's no shelter for unloved motorcycles. We are each to our own, and it's what makes us human and individuals. Some folks like all motorcycles, and that's great too. Some folks hate Harleys, and that's fine. I don't hate any type of motorcycle. You are you and I am I. It's what makes the world such a diverse place. But for me, it was always going to be a Harley-Davidson. Ever since I stole that little paperback book and fell heart first into Sergio Leone's crazy twisted world he invented and brought to life way back in 1964 in Tabernas Desert, Spain, of all times and all places. But nah, I ain't a biker. I'm a musician, I think. It's what I've done the longest. I've written more songs than anyone I know. Wait, I ain't a musician. I'm not good enough on guitar to be one of those. I'm a songster. Yeah, that's what I am. I'm a songster that loves motorcycles. A two-wheeled troubadour. I'm definitely part cowboy, but my point is, it doesn't matter what I am. What matters is who I feel, and when I'm on my motorcycle, I feel timeless. I'm out in the big wide open. I've strayed into another old movie, and when I'm rolling into the sunset, I'm just lost. Right inside the moment. The moment is everything and nothing. I feel everything and nothing. I could ride that moment for an eternity. I'm so alive, yet I ain't feeling a goddamn thing. I'm in unison with the road. The white lines are like stitches, sewing the tedious towns together. I'm a needle flying at the sun, begging the golden lady to fall down slowly. Give me a little more time, won't you? I don't know whether to speed up or slow down to make it last. Why can't she just perch on the end of the road and sit there burning forever? I'd linger endlessly in her sweet tangerine flames, the engine thumping, heart pumping, steady rolling into the night that never comes. No, I ain't a biker. I'm a cowboy.